Why do people in certain parts of the world live so much longer than the rest of us?
We need to simplify from our diets to our household products to our stressful lives.
On the next Dr. Nandi Show. Now we're talking about human longevity. Within the last 20 years or so, experts have identified places around the world where people seem to live exceptionally long lives, and they're called blue zones. And the more we look into these places, the more we learn that their inhabitants are doing similar things. My next guest is the writer, producer, and director of an upcoming documentary film that takes a deep dive into the world's major blue zones. Please welcome my friend Jason Pro. Jason, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So why did you decide, the blue zones, for those of you who don't know, never heard about it, is, Dan Bettner, back in the day, talked about the blue zones. And so why did you want to get in this project and maybe update it and modernize it a little bit?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about the blue zones is that they're doing a lot of similar things, and we can identify what those healthy things are that lead or perhaps facilitate longevity. But what was sort of missed, I think, in that discovery was maybe some of the things we're doing wrong. So we need to look at the U.S. and the Western world, and because it's moving so fast, figure out what we can learn from those blue zones and add to our life and maybe even subtract from our lives here.
Yeah, but let me ask you this. It was the story not complete? Why did you decide to update it? Because a lot of people say, well, we got the blue zones, we know, and Dan and his colleagues, recommended certain things that these people did, but why update it? Why do something about it? Did you think that there are things that are changing in this world that need to be updated?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to take a deeper look. So I think they identified a lot of good things. We wanted to figure out, okay, well, why does something like purpose, how does that facilitate longevity? So we're kind of maybe taking a little bit more of a medical approach or scientific approach, because the science has evolved fast. So now we can explain some of these things a little bit easier. But also we noticed that maybe these blue zones aren't going to be blue zones much longer, right? And this is sort of an interesting thought. And so it takes 100 years to become a blue zone, right? To get to that age of 100. So what we're seeing is the age is declining.
And it takes a lot longer to screw it up. I mean, a lot less time to screw it up, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So for those who don't know what the blue zones, the characteristics are, maybe tell us a little bit about the blue zones.
Yeah, so this was probably back in the 2000s. A demographer, Michel Poulin, from Belgium, looked at a region and said, okay, there seems to be a lot of people living to 100 here. And is this statistically significant, right? So it's sort of this scientific kind of way of looking at this stuff. And what they identified was, yes, there is a specific region where we have a very high proportion of people living to 100 years old, to the point where it's very unique. And we need to figure out maybe what are they doing? What's going on there? Why can we explain this? And why aren't we seeing this in other parts of the world?
Yeah, and what do they find, just to summarize, what kinds of characteristics? How do these people, we're talking about living to 100, not in a nursing home, on a feeding tube, or not knowing where your family is. These are 100-year-olds or centenarians who are integrated, playing with their great-grandchildren, right? So what were their characteristics?
Yeah, I mean, this was the interesting thing, is that because they are 100, they're still moving. We had a 105-year-old guy ride a bike for us, right? So what we wanted to show was that you can be old and still be functional. And, they move a lot. They move throughout their life. Their life is simple. We've kind of overcomplicated a lot of things in the Western world.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to slow down. We need to simplify from our diets to our household products to our stressful lives. We need to slow down. We need to simplify. We need to move. We need to eat real, organic, healthy foods. And we need to socialize. This is one thing that we're now transitioning in the Western world to a more social media-driven, isolated world. And perhaps we need to come back together and find
the best relationship that most kids have now is with their palms, because they're looking down and they're looking at their phone. And so what Jason's talking about, these communities, they lived purposeful lives, so they knew why they were around.